Mr. Sauer, we finally were able to get you on. Now, I presumed how to pronounce your last
You
name.
nailed it, first of all.
Did I?
Totally nailed it. I
Okay,
didn't
I
like
was
the
a little
Mister
scared.
part. You make me feel like an old man, but I suppose as a man with four children, I've earned the Mister title. So
Yes, yeah. I'm trying to catch up with you, man. I'm trying to catch up with you. At the time of recording this, um, my wife's working on 4 and 5, so maybe I will surpass you by
yeah,
the time this comes out. So
yeah.
hey, you
Good
just
luck.
gotta move on to the next one, man.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see
We'll
about
see.
that. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have a whole lot of say in that. I'm not the
yeah.
one that has to
Wow.
do the hard part.
Yeah, for sure, dude. That episode that you had with Jack Resider. Oh my goodness, man, dude, you must have
Yeah, it
been
was very
so excited.
surreal. Um, so I've listened to Jack. I've listened to every episode of Jack of Darknet Diaries.
Yeah,
And he's got an iconic voice. Once you listen to him a bunch, he sounds like Jack Resider. And then having a conversation with that in my earbuds, the same earbuds I've heard his voice in his podcast, but this time
yes,
responding to what I'm saying was very like, this is weird, but super cool. He was super cool. Yeah, that was a great privilege.
yeah. I'm definitely familiar with him and a lot of his stuff, but he's one of those guys that his podcast is so interesting that you could have somebody listening to it like in the car with you that has
Yes.
nothing to do with our field and be
Yes.
enthralled by it because
Yes.
I was coming back from vacation down in me and another family, my family and another family from our church went down and got a beach house in the Outer Banks, and on the way back we were listening to him and they loved it. And I mean, these are like construction worker guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was
No, I
awesome.
think I've even said this to him when we recorded. Like, I appreciate it because when I get tired of my job
Mm,
and I get bored of not bored of cybersecurity, but it gets mundane, like all jobs do.
yeah.
You put on one of the more interesting episodes, and you're reminded, like, oh, there's some wild stuff going on, and it is fascinating. And I've had that exact experience, playing that podcast with like my wife in the car, who's not at all in IT or cybersecurity,
Mm,
but that she's following along, and it's like thrilling. A lot of the stuff that goes on,
it's
fascinating.
it's incredibly thrilling. I mean, there's like, there's the common trends of having like scary story, horror story podcasts and,
Yeah, all the
you
murder
know,
mysteries.
murder. Yeah, murder. Like you open up Spotify for the first time without any preferences and you get all those. And
Yeah,
so it's like, I can't get into those, but there's just something about having somebody tell you about getting arrested because they jailbroke an Xbox or something like that. That's just so enthralling.
yeah,
And then getting
yeah, and
recruited
yeah,
by the government to go defend against, it's so cool.
yeah. There's a lot of interesting ones, like in the underworld side of things, like the Xbox Underground. I think is
Yeah.
such a masterful. It's two-parter, but just like where it starts, this innocuous, like, hey, we're gonna hack Xboxes, and
Yeah.
in the end, the way the story goes, like someone loses their life, which
Yeah.
is like
Yeah.
awful, but how do you connect those dots? And they
Mm,
do. It's
and
it's
they do.
fascinating.
Well, and that's the thing that I think, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this, but that's the part of cybersecurity, like from way back when I was, just dreaming about getting into it before, I couldn't afford college and, there's so much that you have to do to get get into this field, to quote unquote break into this field, that, you know, you still have at the back of your head, at least if you've listened, that um, lives are on the line because of this stuff. It's not just ones and zeros that
Yeah.
are on the line, but like lives are on the line. Like there was that one episode that he did. It was actually one of the more recent ones that he did, where it was I can't remember. It was some European country. Um, it might have been the UK, but I could be wrong. And it was like psychiatrist records uh, that got hacked and distributed on, places like 4chan or something like that, and just people's life. Like they knew of people that you know um, that really impacted them so drastically that
Yeah.
they harmed
I'm
themselves.
not sure what could be worse than having like that ultra high confidence information
Yeah.
that you share with a mental health professional. Having that publicly released is pretty devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The cybersecurity, the impact, again, like all jobs, becomes mundane. Um, and a lot of times I have the benefit of drawing from my other pseudo career, which is I've been in fire and EMS for the better part of 2 decades as a paramedic. And there the stakes are very real, but it's very similar in experience, the ups, the downs, the routine,
Yeah.
um, the like draw to become complacent because so much is routine that the
Mm,
moment you get complacent, you get like a crazy call on the 911 side. Same
mm.
thing in cybersecurity. Every time you write something off because you're like, it's the thousandth time I've seen that. It's every time. It's that
It's
thing.
that one time.
It's always that one.
Oh
But at
boy.
least in that side of my life, the stakes are real and they're tangible in front of you. The big thing about cybersecurity, I think we're all, even the professionals, struggle with is it's not always tangible. The effect is not always kinetic, right? We talk about a number of guests I've had on the Watchers. We've talked about how cybersecurity attacks from APTs and whatnot have had kinetic impact. Like people have died. We can trace that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
disruption from cyber criminals or nation state actors, but it just doesn't feel real because you can't show newsreel of an explosion of a violent event. The outcome can be the same. People's lives can be destroyed. Their
Yeah.
wealth, their economic stability can all be taken away at a larger scale than at this point kinetic violence could.
Yeah.
But you can't show it on a newsreel. It doesn't lead, you know?
Yeah. There's nothing newsworthy about some guy sitting behind a screen and running scripts and stuff like that.
No,
It's
and the public, it's so esoteric to the public, so they don't
yeah.
engage with it much either.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I guess that really does lead us into what you guys are doing to at least move the needle some. And so I guess
Yeah.
this is where I want to dive into you. So Andy Sauer, you're pretty well known in the industry. You've got a lot of people that you have their backs as their MSP Sentinel Blue has
Yeah.
their backs and performs assessments and all these things. And I just I know that you probably are an open book with a lot of people, but as usual,
Yeah.
I hope one of my goals for having people on is um, your face on LinkedIn and at conferences and at talks and even on the Watchers. Uh, that may still feel a little distant to some people,
Sure. Yeah.
and I'm hoping that with all of these people that I have on, including you, that as a result of people watching this, there's only more trust in what you're trying to help them do.
Yeah.
That's like my big thing is I want people to get to know the guest somewhat personally, if possible. So that's where I want to start. If you're comfortable with that, it's just
Yeah,
go
dude.
back as far as you want to go and tell us about who you are and what kind of drove you to be
Yeah.
the person that you are today, helping the people you do today.
Yeah. So the main thing I'll say is the story that ties into my LinkedIn, to the Watchers, to me being here, my professional life, as we all have our professional lives. My real life is outside the window that I see right behind my screen. My kids are outside. That's my real life. You know what I mean?
Mm.
That's where I'm grounded. Now, where I spend my time cultivating a living and creating what I can is in the space that I'm in, cybersecurity and IT and whatnot. That story starts with, I think, as many people's does. It starts with video games. It starts with an addictive attachment to video games and an interest in exploring and understanding, like, how is this happening? How is the fact that I put in, back in the day, 5 different CDs to install a game, how is that translating to something that appears on my screen that I can then connect with other people to play with? So much of the interest came from that.
Mm.
And as a teenager, I started to build my own computers. I got into overclocking to try to get more frames out of like the computer because I couldn't afford, to buy the next GPU, and I always sort of poke fun at my dad because I was definitely letting video gaming affect my life badly in high school. staying up to like 4 a.m., a lot of World of Warcraft kind of situation.
Yeah.
And he would say things like, hey, video, you gotta snap out of that. Like the video games are not going to take you anywhere. Well, Dad, here I am, in no small part because of the interest in video games and tech. I think his real lesson was like, hey, you gotta get some sleep and be a functional human. You can't just
that was
play
the
World
thing.
of Warcraft.
That was the thing.
Yeah. So it was more about that, but yeah, started there, got an interest in it, and just became sort of a hobbyist about computers. And my dad is an IT professional as well. So like many young men, I swore I was not going to become an IT professional because my dad was. And I was like, well, I'm not going to become my dad. Who does that? So that's a lot of where my interest in fire and EMS came. At 17, I joined my local fire department on the volunteer side. And I went through fire school, did a lot of stuff on the fire side to begin with. And then I learned like, well, hey, fire engines mostly just go to medical calls and very infrequently have a serious fire. So I did a lot of medical calls. So I got my EMT so I could be more helpful. And once I got into EMT school, that's sort of like the 3-month basic level of training. I built up an interest in EMS more broadly and medicine. And so then I went to paramedic school over the next several years and got my paramedic, which is essentially a 2-year sort of program. And all throughout that, I was kind of bouncing back and forth. Like I would do some IT jobs because I could build computers, and my dad ran a company, an MSP. So I would pop in, I'd be a help desk tech, but I'd be trying to explore this EMS career. I'd go work at a hospital for a little bit. Then I'd go back, be an engineer, and then I'd go, teach paramedic school. It was this thing for a long time I was bouncing between.
Busy guy.
Well, like many people, I think the idea that I was going to know what I wanted to be when I grew up was just a dumb idea for me.
It is so silly.
I have many ideas.
Yeah.
And that changes day to day. I'm still chasing my interests and I like having a broad set of experiences. So I've kind of bounced between those, but around 2017, I kind of had to, pick a lane. I was seeing somebody very seriously who is now my wife, and we were looking to build a family. And one of those career paths, I hate to tell you, doesn't pay very well. One of them does pay very well, and I have, a pretty intense interest in both. So I decided to take a full-time job at what happened to be a defense contractor. In late 2017 is when we started hearing about DFARS 7012 and 800-171. So in my interview, they were like, hey, you could do this IT stuff. Have you heard of this 171? I don't know if you can hear my dogs are going off. I can mute and tell them to stop. But they kind of brought that up, and I was like, listen, I poked around with ISO and HIPAA. I bet I could, figure out this 171 thing. And that started the journey that I'm really on, which has been Sentinel Blue. That was the genesis of that.
Okay.
That started the 2-year journey when I was working at that defense contractor to start to figure out like, what is this 800-171 business? And then like, what is GCC High? We became one of the first small businesses into GCC High and started to plug into this larger community. And throughout my tenure at that company, it just so happened that a Reddit community popped up associated with the NIST controls. Somebody else originally created the NIST controls subreddit, but I jumped in very early and helped them out and sort of became like the lead mod. And then one day I was just like tired of Reddit messages. So a couple of us who were active, I was like, let's just create a Discord so we can actually talk to each other. And now that is the CUI Discord, the CUI Center of Excellence, as we call it. Now boasting some 4,000, almost 5,000 members. And,
okay, so let me ask you about that really quick.
Yeah.
I did not know that you were one of the founding members of the QE Discord.
I am the admin. It is my server, so to speak.
I did not know that. Who's the other? Who are you? Is there another co-admin that started it with you?
No, but like there were some early folks who were part of those conversations very early on. Like Ryan Bonner was one of the people on Reddit.
Ryan, yep.
Let's see, who else could I name? Right, I think Jacob Horn was fairly early into the group there. Bill Osborne, basically a bunch of people who are mods now. Because the early folks.
I did
But
not
a
know
bunch of
that
us
you were.
joined.
Oh my
Oh yeah,
goodness.
yeah, and it, it all stemmed from like I was in a position trying to figure this stuff out, and the genesis of it was like, I need to talk to other people about this. I don't get it. I don't know what this says. And it was
Yes.
like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys seeing on your GCC high tenant? Because in the early GCC high days, it was like no teams. One day you would log in like, oh, there's new features, right? And we needed other
Yeah,
people to say like, hey, what do you see? Is it working on your machine? So yeah, that's what
that is
started
so
that.
fascinating because this this seems to be, in my opinion, the baseline experience for a lot of people coming in early, like between 2017 and 2020, that like 3 to 4 years,
Yeah.
everybody's just thrown into a job where they have to figure it out, and then they fall in love with it. And that was my experience in 2020, and that's it. That's what I think that's what I'm hearing from like everybody. But I did not know that you were the Discord starter. You were that guy.
Yeah. If you check in the deep lore, there's like associated with my name in there. There's like a crown that marks who the account owner is, the server
Yeah,
owner.
I guess I've
But
just never paid attention.
yeah, well, and it's also like, hey, it's I happen to be the guy that like clicked the start button, right? There was an early group of people,
Right.
some of the people that I named, who immediately sort of congregated there, and then Allison Giddens joined
Yep.
and became a big personality, and um, just it became this really awesome community. And
Yeah.
what has held it, what has made it what it is at the outset we have always been very aggressively anti-vendor.
Mm.
We overcorrect for vendor behavior. We overcorrect. We're meaner to vendors than
Yeah.
maybe we ought to be, but we just don't have tolerance for it because it kills online communities when people treat your community like their sales pipeline. So we're
Exactly.
pretty
Exactly.
pretty unforgiving in that regard. And with the subreddits that we run, the CMMC, the NIST controls, the GovIT, Azure Gov, those are all subreddits that are managed by the same team, and
Mm.
we're aggressively anti-vendor and
Policing
very
those vendor,
protective.
yeah, pitchiness. Yeah, I get that. And I think what has also flourished that Discord is you're not just anti-vendor per se. I mean, from what I've observed, I'm not in there as often as I'd like to be, just because we're so busy as well. But you're also really, really good about handling misinformation. Like
Yes.
there is, you know just as well as anybody how many times like you'll see on something on LinkedIn, and it'll show up as a beware on the Discord or something like
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
it's not just people posting things into the Discord. It's also like, hey, I'm seeing this wild claim about 100% inheritance of the CMMC requirements from this vendor. Beware of them, kind of thing, which has
Yeah.
been excellent for this ecosystem.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a bad egg sort of channel where,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's a tough line to toe, especially because a number of us who are managing that community now run our own companies or are senior at competitive companies, right? A number of the people I just said now operate at a high level at very competitive companies. But generally, the feel and the vibe is like, hey, we're still kind of in this together. We all really want to protect a community where we can just freely talk as practitioners and not try to be sold to, not deal with people that we don't, agree with values wise. Like people who would sell snake oil to this industry are persona non grata in that community and are treated as such. And they're often ousted, and then they go on LinkedIn and they complain about, the Discord. Well, hey man, either we're all a-holes or you are,
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. There's plenty of channels for advertising. Um, there's
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities for. I mean, that's what we have the conferences for. This is meant. This is seemingly to me, and I think that it's done a good job of it. This is meant to just help people get move
Yeah.
the needle in
Yeah.
this industry.
philosophically, I am very pro information transparency.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm a big fan of, open source as a concept, mostly because it benefits me personally. Like, so I didn't go to college. My education, my rise through IT was entirely on the back of good Googling to find what other people had posted, very helpful people in like IRC chat rooms helping me troubleshoot things that I like had no grasp on. That's one of the great things about IT as a community, is it can be very helpful. It can be a little, tough sometimes, but a lot of times it's like the community's tough on you when you're lazy.
Yeah,
But if
that's what
you're
I was going to say.
showing,
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you come and show willingness, like you've done the reading, you've tried it, like people will really try to help you out, and that's kind of the same thing that the Discord community does. It's when people show up with basic questions, they're just starting their journey. We love to help with that, but we don't do your work for you.
Yeah.
We want to help you get there, but you got to want to get there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it is a very engineer, technical heavy group of people, and so there are personalities that come with that. That
Yes.
you can get rubbed the wrong way, even if you're not a vendor trying to sell something so that you get ousted. You're just being involved. I guess my encouragement to people coming into this and coming into the community is you're dealing with 90% of communication missing over, the fact that it's text, right? Unless you hop into the call with somebody. You're missing body language and tone and all these things. And you're also dealing with people who are very focused and sometimes have a very type A or blunt personality type, and they're just trying to get stuff done. So have some patience. Hey, don't take it personal.
Yeah. Tact is not something the IT and cybersecurity community are well known for.
No.
Soft skills are generally one of the more challenging parts of the job.
Right.
It is getting better. I think the workforce is becoming more diverse in terms of life experiences and people who show up with more soft skills and technical. And for a long time, the real technical people have tried to keep the soft skill people out. But I think enough of us have learned, because I put myself largely on the tech side, enough of us have learned, oh, you want them there. You want good communicators.
They balance
on
you
your
out.
side.
Yeah.
And they can help you get things done that
Right.
maybe you're not great at communication.
At persuasion.
To a board. Right.
Yeah.
So it takes a village.
What would you say for people who are new or haven't heard of the Discord, so now they're going to join, because obviously we're recommending it, so people do what we say. But what would you say for people who are new to it are the most valuable channels within there? Because that server has kind of exploded into a lot of different things.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
There's a dedicated channel for like being new to CMMC. And so if you're hearing about the Discord and you're not super familiar with it, it's the CUI Center of Excellence. I'm sure we could put a link to it somewhere. But it's very CMMC oriented. It's very oriented to federal and defense contractor, IT cybersecurity. It's got off-topic stuff like anything else, but it's centered on CMMC as the primary topic at the moment. There's a whole channel for being new to CMMC where you ask questions and people make sure that they're around to answer them. And generally, that community does a good job of self-policing. We do have a construct called fellows, and
yes,
there's verifieds, there's fellows. There's something sort of in between there that I'm missing it at the moment. But we have like a group of people that we know will give good information. We have a voting process where people are brought up for a vote. Somebody nominates them. It's like, hey, this person's always giving out good information. Is always very helpful. Is not an a-hole about it. The whole collective group votes and promotes somebody into that role. And so if you're engaging on the Discord, you'll see people with some different, sort of colors to their name. And you'll see fellows and all that. Those are people who generally I would listen to, who tend to have the right knowledge, who've done the research. a lot of people still, just kind of say things to say things. A lot of people show up and speak from LinkedIn. Tends not to be the people that are our fellows in our community. It tends to be people who have just recently joined themselves. So just be wary, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'd hang out in those channels. I spend a lot of time in the MSP channel. That's near and dear to my heart as a topic. One, Sentinel Blue is an MSP. Two, while we are a C3PIO, and I do a lot in the C3PO world. I'm on the CyberAB's C3PAO Advisory Council.
Yeah, I
and
saw
I
that. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. That's been a fun effort. I chair the External Services Provider Subcommittee. And so I'm very involved in solving that problem. And it is a big problem to be solved.
We need to talk about
Listen,
that.
I'm here for
We need
it.
to talk
I'm
about
here
it.
for it.
Hey, I will. I don't know how much you're allowed to share from that subcommittee, but
there's a general confidentiality to like the specifics, but like as I tell people, I'm bringing my opinions. I can't speak on behalf of everyone else until we formally pass something.
Yeah.
But I've got my opinions, and that's what I champion for.
Then I will just ask away. This wasn't part of what I wanted to go over, but it is now, because I forgot that you were added to that subcommittee. I saw it on their website. I do want to ask then, one of the more common problems that we're seeing is just, I'll just put it bluntly, assessor inconsistency with how they treat external service providers, like from a what documentation is actually required and when. So like, for example, the literal interpretation of the 32 CFR is, all external service providers need a CRM. Like it gets done defining what an ESP is. Yeah. And then it says they need a CRM. That's my interpretation, of course. And I think that that's just a plain reading of the 32 CFR. But then you have, C3POs that will look at tools like, Duo, for example, like a cloud app tool. It's an external service provider. By definition, it stores security relevant data, things like that.
Yeah.
But they might not have, especially for their non-FedRAMP version, which isn't required for security protection data, they might not have a CRM. So what is the solution for companies, who have this kind of literal requirement, to have a CRM that tells them what they're responsible for. We can kind of deduce what they're responsible for. They're a MFA product, so you can kind of deduce which control they apply to and just write it in your SSP. But at the end of the day, there's this little requirement, from the 32 CFR that does not match the cap. I guess my question is, for inconsistencies like that, I know that's not the only one, but like that, like
there's many.
There is many.
My advice, if that's where we're going towards, like, what do we do with this problem, this lack of consistency? Being knowledgeable is your best weapon. Yeah. One of the main reasons that Sentinel Blue became a C3PAO back in 2022 was not because we originally wanted to operate a C3PAO practice, and now we do operate a very healthy C3PAO practice. It was transparently so that I could never sit across from a C3PAO and have them try to flex credentials. That's it. I never wanted them to say like, "Hey, we're the authority. Like, hey, I'm the lead CCA. So am I. So let's talk like peers and not be talked down to." Well, that's what it was, because we could anticipate exactly this. You were going to have we knew, anyone who's been paying attention knew that the C3PO community was going to be very diverse. There was going to be lots of people with a lot of opinions. Auditors already trend toward conservative opinions. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to say it. I'm not talking about your politics here. I'm saying auditors tend to come from a more conservative position, more risk averse, more high assurance sort of positions. I'm not that. I'm very pro security, and I'm very frustrated by having to make what I consider poor security decisions to benefit compliance. So I've always wanted to be a voice in the ecosystem that could go toe to toe with everyone else, but could represent a more progressive view, because I think the more progressive path forward gets us the outcome we need faster and more effectively. So that is why we became a C3PAO, so that we could go through that, because I fully believe the knowledge, the understanding is my best weapon. We've done 23 CMMC assessments. I've done 4 or 5 DIPCAC highs. All the DIPCACs, I've always had some point of contention. There's always been something that's come up where they kind of disagree with us.
Every time.
The CMMC ones, because they always have different people, and they're always seeing something kind of new. We went through one of the first for a small company back in 2021 with one of our clients. So a lot of it's just been like trailblazing in general too. Yes. But we've won I don't want to say won, that's saying the wrong thing. We've
convinced them.
We've met a reasonable sort of understanding.
Yeah.
So many times because we had the knowledge and we could point to the regulation, we could explain a rationale. Yes. We could show, hey, we've really thought this out.
Right.
That has been instrumental to getting things through. So in this particular issue about ESPs and the way that they're being thought of or interpreted by CPAOs, ground yourself in the regulation. 32 CFR 170, in my opinion, but I think this is pretty objective, says in its own text that it is the only regulatory text that really matters. It says the regulatory text controls. It talks about the cap, says the cap is supplementary. The supplementary documents doesn't mean the cap has no authority and that the cap is useless and we don't need to follow it. It says where these things don't agree, 32 CFR 170 controls. So if I were an ESP, which I am, and I felt like I was toeing the line and someone might have a debate with me about whether or not I'm a CSP or what else I have to bring to the fight, I would go read the very small amount of 32 CFR 170 that addresses ESPs, and I would understand very fully what it requires of me. One of the key questions that the ecosystem has asked the subcommittee that I chair to look at is certified ESPs and how they're supposed to be handled, because 32 CFR 170 says, hey, if they're already certified, that should mean a reduction in effort of the assessment. Well, we've seen entirely variable opinions of what exactly that means.
The cap doesn't really give you a lot of help.
The cap says you may consider the controls that they take responsibility for. You may consider them validated, which they use the term may, which has opened up a lot of questions. Does that mean it's optional? Is it suggestive? Yeah. Is it implying? So you get into all this sort of stuff. But my point in all of that is, if you're going to engage in this ecosystem, if you're going to be an ESP, an MSP, MSSP, whoever you're going to be in this ecosystem, you cannot go in uninformed. You're going to set yourself up for a battle, and you're not going to have the credentials. The C3PAOs are generally going to say, like, well, listen, we're the experts here. It's kind of our opinion that matters the most. You're going to find yourself going through the process of, raising the red flag up to the cyber AB to try to petition them on your behalf. All that's a mess. You can avoid that probably by being very well informed at the outset. And in the phase 1 activities with your C3PAO, being very clear about the scope and what the expectation should be on what you're meant to demonstrate. All that pays dividends to be well prepared from an information standpoint. And I'll just say again, the information's out there. You just got to read it,
Yeah. And like free, non-consulting contract VC relationships, but free resources are there. Yes. And like we said, the Discord is there for anybody to hop in and try to figure things out. Just don't be a jerk.
Yeah. Discord's there. A lot of the great people in the community on LinkedIn, a lot of the companies like, Sentinel Blue puts out some content. Summit 7 puts out a ton of content. Very informative, very helpful. IntelliGRC puts out content. And it's not always laced in salesy stuff. There's really substantive content being produced by key players in the ecosystem who are freely sharing, like, hey, this is literally what we're doing that works for us. Yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
We are often going to conferences. I mean, obviously, we have a business to run too. Like we're all there to try to feed our families while also helping this industry. But we're all constantly going to conferences and just pleading with MSPs, get serious, please. We're begging you.
Yeah.
Like there's not enough to MSPs that aren't going to screw their customers during their assessments. There's not enough. We need more MSPs that care about it, know what they're doing, and are, like you said, are just baseline informed, like basic stuff that you know.
Yeah. You got to do the reading. I say this to my team a lot because I'm a subject matter expert in all of this, and I would say I'm up there in terms of, if there were a short list of who's up there, I think I make the top 20. I'd say that.
Yeah.
You know how the top 1 got there, and the top 5, the top 10, the top 20? We all just read it. We've just done the reading. We've done the thinking. It's all there. These are public documents. Or we've engaged in a community to help us build the understanding. We've done the work. You don't have to go on the 4 or 5 year journey that some of us have been on, or 8 year journey some of us have been on. You don't need to become a subject matter expert at that level, but you do need to inform yourself. It pays dividends. It's a lot easier to go that route than, as some companies have found out, to be mid-assessment being told, hey, so this whole way you've architected everything is going to fall apart.
Yeah, those are the worst. And a lot of it is avoidable. We've seen some of that too. A lot of it is, if you had spent 30 minutes even with a consultant, or 30 minutes with just a professional in the industry, would have saved you probably tens of thousands of dollars worth of work that is just not going to work.
Yeah. Approach any of us, like at conferences, any of our companies. If you're at a conference, like, you just walk over with some coffee and say, like, hey, can I pick your brain? I've yet to meet someone who's going to be like, no. They can be like, please ask me questions. Yeah. Like, why do you think we're here? We're here to talk, like, and share what's working for us. We don't always, get on stage for self-aggrandizement, although of course that's fun. No, you get on stage because, like, hey, maybe something I can say can be useful to you.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Listen, everyone who gets on stage has to go in with a little bit of like, well, this is cool. I'm on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. That was cool the one time I did it. One time.
It could be nerve-wracking.
It was pretty nerve-wracking, but it was fun. Yeah, I agree with you. So I guess, what would you say is, the most common thing? I know this is probably a very generic and niche question to ask, but I think with everything that's been said, I think it matters. Like, what is the most common thing that you're seeing holding people back from getting to where they need to be? Whether it's new like newbies in the industry, not knowing where to go. People, arrogance, that's a big thing I think holds people back, is arrogance and not being willing to listen to other people. But like, for whether it's at the individual level or organizationally, I mean, you guys are coming across companies all the time. I mean, whether they end up signing up with Sentinel Blue or not, you're at least having conversations from a sales pipeline perspective. What is it that you're seeing as like the most fallacious thing that people should be aware of and stay away from?
Well, I think the main challenge that we seem to encounter that people have had is, it's like being told that you need to, get in shape, right? And you show up to the gym, like there's 50 machines, and there's guys in the corner who are power lifters who are just like yelling and making tons of noise. And then there's the Olympic like runner who's been running a marathon on the treadmill. It's very unapproachable, and you're like, where do I start? Like, I'm never going to catch up to the guy over there who's benching 5,000 pounds and this guy's sprinting for 10 minutes. So I think a lot of people just have that about 171 and CMMC in general, especially in the small, medium business segment. You're handed an esoteric document, a academic NIST publication, which, as much as I love NIST, it's an academic publication. It doesn't read very easily, even to the professionals. It's very dry. Now, if you're a small business whose whole thing is like, hey, we get parts out the door that go on a weapons platform, and you're told, do these 110 things. Like, you start reading a couple of them, you're like, yeah, I can keep the right users in my system. I can make sure only our devices. But then you get into some wild stuff. You're like, FIPS validated cryptography. What is?
Yeah.
Okay. So identify system flaws. Like, what is all this?
Correlate your processes for
right. it's 110 equally weighted things that feel very unapproachable. And the general sense is like an analysis paralysis of which one of those do you start? There's no playbook. There's no, NIST didn't rank them in their risk position like maybe they could have or should have, to be like, hey, start with MFA, go, just do that. Get an incident response plan. Here's what that could look like. No, it's just, hey, do these 110 things. And if you don't do all 110 of them and you don't pass the test we're going to put you through with a perfect score on all 110, you're going to lose everything. That's created conditions where people are very scared to do the wrong thing, but they also don't know the right thing to do. So then they just sit there and do nothing until, out of sight, out of mind. Well, that comes back. And I can tell you right now, it's coming back to a lot of companies because I'm seeing a lot of contracts, a lot of defense agencies and commands.
Primes.
Contracts are saying, hey, where's your level 2 self? We want it. Time now. Because we're going to want your real level 2 C3PO done by the end of the year. There's no requirement for that. I'm just seeing a lot of
the
pressure.
primes, they're already starting.
Yep. And so now we're getting a lot of more panicked phone calls, which, hey, our sales guys love, right? Because now it's like, cool. You are closer on that sales pipeline of ready to buy, but now it doesn't serve anybody because now you're desperate to buy, which means you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to end up maybe buying from the wrong people,
or churning once you get your certification,
potentially, or like the real pain point for us is going to be, we try to be as helpful as we can. I never want to be the no guy from a security standpoint. My philosophy has always been, as an IT and cybersecurity person, is like, the user brings you something that sounds crazy. You don't go, that's crazy. No, you go, okay, I think I see what you're trying to do. Let's maybe massage that and do it this way. That's our perspective. And so when clients come to us, we're like, hey, we'll try to make something work. But now they're coming to be like, hey, we got 30 days to get like a decent position. Like, what can we do in 30 days? And I'm like, you can do a lot of disrupting and of breaking things. Most of the time your business can't tolerate that. Like, I'm sorry to tell you, there's not maybe a lot that can happen. And it can be kind of dire. Like, we occasionally hear from prospects today who are already on stop work orders, who've been told like, hey, you're not getting cut any more work until you sort this out, until you at least get like a level 2 self. And then all the pressure is like, hey, make it happen quick. And if we have to like fudge it a little bit, could we? And we have to be the guys to be like, no, you can't. Like, we have to put ourselves in a defensible position.
Right.
So it's creating a bit of an emergency scenario for a lot of businesses.
That's come across my mind too. Thankfully, I can't think of anybody, maybe one, that intentionally wanted us to do unethical things, because we used to do a lot of services before we really like went all in on developing IntelliGRC, the application. So we used those services experience to help us develop it. So there was times where people were coming to us for, help us, implement 800.171, walk through it with us, represent us during our assessment, things like that. But what I was saying is, I can only think really of one instance where it was for us, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. This is how we want to handle it. We know it's shady, but we got to get this done kind of conversation. And I wonder how often that's happening now that the pressure's on. I mean, you said you've experienced some of that. Is it like, do you think that this is going to be the catalyst for fraud, but also now that,
people are going to do dumb stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's more the people that aren't going to take any action who are just going to be like, yeah, we did that. The C3PO thing is going to be a real challenge, but like all certification regimes,
that's kind of what I was hinting at.
Someone's going to do something. Yeah. There's somebody who's going to have a low price for a high assurance, and that'll happen. But people will throw that at the model and be like, well, this is why the model's bad. All models are kind of bad in that way. It's not to say that the model needs to be thrown out. Like, the model can adjust for that and control for that, but it's going to happen. Like, somewhere down the line, someone's going to have a level 2 cert, that when somebody goes and looks at it, they're going to be like, this was entirely vaporware, and that someone's going to get in trouble, and they should get in trouble.
Yeah. And their
But I think it's
going to have
yeah,
problems.
they'll lose their ISO accreditation and all that if it all plays out the way it should. But I think that's probably the minority of actors. It's more just going to be like what's happening now. Like, you know, people have been sitting on it. It hasn't been real. It's only real to so many companies the moment a contract officer says, hey, I can't cut this task order to you. I can't include you on this contract until you have a status for me. And now they're like, well, okay, we know we've been punting this, but how soon can we have this? Which, again, for a company like us, who tries to be helpful, it can almost be, it's a double-edged blade for us, right? It creates more sales opportunity and it removes roadblocks for our existing client base, but our volume of work has grown drastically in the last 6 months from the pressure to move forward, to move faster, to support self-assessments where we have to, you know, collect evidence to maintain. We've supported, I think, 23 CMMC level 2 certs in like maybe 30 weeks, right? It's most weeks we have an assessment we're supporting, and we're a small team. We're not private equity backed. We're we're bootstrapped. We're trying to do everything the right way, but certainly we have felt the impact of, you know, having to provide a complex product in all the modern confines of IT, which is like, we need everything to work all the time. We can't have downtime. You can't cause disruption, and we need all this by Tuesday. And you're like, oh.
And we have to test
Sorry,
it.
man. Yeah.
We have to make sure it works. And like, yeah.
So that's our problem to solve, right? That's not a complaint or like hey, you know, we shouldn't have to solve that, but it's challenging conditions for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the market, as we have always known, was going to, and there's no taking this train off the tracks. This is just the way capitalism works. It is going to be a rush at the end to everyone slide in before the deadline. And a lot of people aren't going to make the deadline, and they're going to have to suffer the consequences. Companies like us are trying to help you now, but you're making the bed you're going to sleep in.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, we want to encourage and empathize with companies, and I know you're doing this too. I'm not discrediting that. We want to encourage and empathize with companies who have gotten let's say the short end of the stick when it comes to how these requirements were communicated to them, or lack thereof. Yeah, and we still even get some of that to this day. But you're right. There is also a large swath of companies that have heard about this and have not cared. And it's kind of like at this end of the time, there's still grace here because there's still companies ready to help. There's still, you know, there's still people ready to jump in. You made the mistake of ignoring it. Now let's fix this mistake, and let's, you know, learn from our mistakes and move forward and actually do security right and protect our nation and things like that. So I see where you're coming from for sure. I guess that that makes me want to pivot then, you know, to then, okay, let's talk about Sentinel Blue for a little bit. What is, first off, your drive to start Sentinel Blue, you said came from, you were kind of thrown in the deep end with in 2017 with these requirements, and you said that is the catalyst for Sentinel Blue. Like that's
it's the genesis. It's where that line starts.
Was there anything else that kind of said, oh, I want to be an MSP in this space and not just a consultant?
Well, so I had spent the majority of my IT career in an MSP. So it's the world I knew and spent a lot of time in.
With your father, right?
Yes, right. And so that's what I would work for them for a couple of years. And then I'd be like, I can't do this. I'm not gonna be an IT guy. So that's when I'd like go work at the hospital, become teach paramedic school and all that sort of thing. But I spent most of my career full time in that role and doing that other stuff as side gigs. But I've always been very entrepreneurial. Here's the thing. Part of why I started a company is I've never been a great employee. However hypocritical that makes me, I have to bear that burden. But I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've probably had like 7 LLCs to my name throughout my life. In high school, all my buddies and my brother played in local bands, and I was like, let me get on this action. I'm not a musician, but like, what if I create the record label that did absolutely nothing? I've always had an entrepreneurial sort of bent, right? So Sentinel Blue was the genesis of, hey, I've cultivated subject matter expertise. I've found a community that is interested in my expertise, right? Through the community, through the Discord, through the Reddit, people are reaching out to me all the time to say like, hey, you seem like maybe you know what's going on. Like, would you come do a couple hours for us? And so I built up some side work, my defense contractor job. And then I'd end up leaving that over some turmoil at that defense contractor. The whole leadership team sort of all quit within a couple of months of each other. Things happened.
Yes.
I went and worked for another company in the space for a little bit. But I'd always, Sentinel Blue had already been a thing for a while, where it's like my side gig, and enough interest and enough opportunity was there where I was doing the math. I'm like, hey man, if there's ever a chance to bet on yourself, this is that.
Yeah. That's
cool. So I took that shot, quit my job in July 2020, and have been on an absolute like white knuckle rocket ride ever since.
Grinding.
It's definitely been a grind. It's been a ton of fun. I love what we've built. I love the opportunity to position my values and establish some influence with them. And I really like the influence that I've been able to sort of cultivate both inside of a company, but also who we represent to the ecosystem,
right?
And the fingerprint that we've been able to have on a couple of things through the industry groups we work in. That's very validating, and I'm very much outcome oriented, and so I'm very interested in like, hey, what can we improve? What can we make better? That's super gratifying to me.
Yeah.
Whether it's again externally how Sentinel Blue can help the ecosystem, or like internally how we can make the careers and the lives of the people that we work with better and more fulfilling and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you said you've loved seeing your values kind of get perpetuated in this business. Like this was one surefire way that what you believed in, what mattered to you, was instantiated in a group of people that actually made something get done and something get accomplished. What were those guiding principles? Like I don't want to be political or anything like that, but I mean, if you want to.
Listen, like I said, I'm an open book. I'm very transparent. I have very progressive values. The defense contractor I worked for was a Danish-owned subsidiary that had a very Danish culture because of being a member of a Danish global company. And the Danes have a very progressive employer view on things. I was starting a young family, and they paid our full healthcare premiums for our whole family at like a platinum PPO. And I was just like, what in the world? And their explanation for that was like, hey, we get that for free over here in Denmark. We want you guys to have what we have. Their culture around, actual compassion and, what I think is more like a responsible capitalism. I have a lot of respect for the CEO of that company. His name is Michael Holm. It's a company called Systematic. A lot of respect and admiration for how, they do good work and they are creating value, but they also didn't treat people like assets. Everyone was treated very human. They were very approachable. I got to meet a lot of senior leadership who were just very humble and down to earth as people. And so I do a lot of emulating of that and how I lead and structure Sentinel Blue. In some part because I learned while working there, but also while I worked there, I was like, oh, this is my style. This is what I'm into. Very creative, very open, very open to ideas. So with Sentinel Blue, it's kind of like having a canvas. Anyone that starts a company, you essentially are starting with a blank canvas. Now you have to deal with what you paint on it. So it's a blessing and a curse, because like if you paint something, you're like, that's not any good. Like, well, you're the person who did it. But it's like really it's a ton of creative freedom.
Yeah.
And it's, it is a place of accumulating influence and essentially power, not in the Machiavellian power, but when you're a leader of a company and have, at this point, Sentinel Blue's got over 40 people, you can, I'm finding out the only thing I really can do at this point is I can push people in a certain direction. And if I can push them into like hey, let's be more compassionate. Let's be less cutthroat. Let's be less about the bean counting and the bottom line. And let's be more associated with long-term partnership and impact. I say something all the time around here, which is like, listen, I may occasionally make a bad business decision, and I'm okay doing that if it was grounded in our values. Like, I'm willing to take the hit and say like, that turned out to be a bad investment. We did something experimental and it was a waste of time, effort, and energy and money. Oh, well, that's the cost of being innovative, and I'd rather us be innovators and try new things and push the envelope and maybe get burned on occasion than just sitting, in the back and waiting for the other ideas to come up and trying to be the company that,
right,
makes the other ideas, and takes them and runs with it. So that's where a lot of it comes from.
And it seems like that approach, which it really resonates with me, honestly. And I'm thankful because there's a lot of similarities with Intelli. That approach is what, it's the cost. What you said, the cost of innovation. It's also just the cost of being a decent person trying to make a living and make sure that your employees make a living. I think that companies that, kind of to use your earlier quip about focusing on the bottom line and that being all that matters, they have a really hard time maintaining good employees. They have a really hard time keeping people that are honest, that don't that don't feel ashamed when they make a mistake, and they want to show up to work. And I've been part of companies like that, so it's like,
oh yeah.
And that's coming from a perspective that really, I do really care about merit, and I do really care about hard work, and I do really care about people showing up and keeping their word and things like that. But also at the same time, having an employer that is also compassionate at the same time as you being an employee that is like that, it only incentivizes you to meet each of those ends of the bargain. Employer having compassion, listen, treating them right. Yeah.
So when we hire in new people, I always make sure I get time with them, and I have my thing. I talk about the company values, sort of the mission, the purpose, that sort of thing. And I always tell people, first of all, I've got the big title, so roll your eyes. You should take what I say with a grain of salt, because until you see it in action, you should be a skeptic. I'm good with that.
I might say things 3 times before it gets implemented.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I've got my flaws, right? But I always tell them like, hey, take it with a grain of salt. Let our actions be how you end up judging it. But I tell them like, hey, we have got a very progressive vision. We're really trying, the way I state it in our purpose is like, I want to prove that you can do things in a more progressive way. You can be less cutthroat. And not only will you keep pace with the competition, my wager is you'll actually end off better. If you don't play to the quarter, but you play to the long term and you invest in people, it's amazing some of the relationships I've had. There are people who've been at Sentinel Blue for 5 of the 6 years we've been around, who've been through some stuff personally, and their performance really went down for a time because they're going through something personal. Sentinel Blue had their back. We were thankfully in a position where we could be like, okay, man, if you gotta phone it in for a little bit, if we have to take you off the client line and just kind of put you in the background for a bit while you focus on that, we know when we get you back, you're going to be 120%. While that's an amazing, nice thing to do, and that's compassionate, I just always tell people like, hey, that's also self-interest on Sentinel Blue's part. Investing in you pays us dividends. Right? If we create that trust, it's mutually beneficial, but don't get it wrong. It's not only ever out of the goodness of a company's heart to treat you that way. It's self-serving. You're a high performer. You create value for the company. You're not, what have you done for me lately? You're what is your potential, and how do we achieve that with you? So it comes from I think the values come from a great place. I would say that I'm biased. You should roll your eyes at me. But I really think this is the way I used to communicate this was, we're trying to create what we would call the company of the future, not the company of the future in terms of flying cars, but the company of the future that's like, hey, you're human beings, we're teammates, we're not hierarchical. I'm not going to yell at you because I'm the boss. Like, we're going to work together. We're going to go off and take some shots at stuff. We might fail. And hey, if we fail, I'm okay with it if we did it our way. If we had to be unoriginal and non-creative and play to the bottom line, and I had to, have my actions directed by someone who's just counting the beans, being like, well, we could save 2 pennies by offering a lower level of service over here. I got no interest in that. This wouldn't be worth it.
I love that. Absolutely love that. I think I'm sure you and Ozzy have talked about that before too, right? Like there's a lot of
real recognizes real.
yeah, yeah. Because Ozzy says a lot of the same things. Like when I was back in 2019 when I first got into my career in IT and security, Ozzy was the one who interviewed me, and this was before Intelli was like, that was the focus, right? It was more of a side project of a parent company. And that was one of the things that I've noticed just from the get go is when you cultivate and you invest in people, they're pretty loyal, and I feel like I have nothing but loyalty for this company.
Right, and it's so easy. It's like I don't want this to sound cynical, because at the end of the day, when my guiding,
some people deserve it.
But at the end of the day, one of the things that I really want is, at the end of my Sentinel Blue journey, whatever it is, I want to be able to bump into anybody that worked with and or for me in the street 10 years from now and have it be a laugh and like, hey man, how's it going? I don't want to be like, oh, like I have no interest in being like these guys up on like Wall Street who like have to have their private elevator because they can't face anybody kind of thing. Like, no, I'd much rather, I want Sentinel Blue to be a part of your life journey. That's a good thing, a highlight, whether it's 1 year with us or 10 years with us. I want it to be a time you look back and you're like, that was a good time. Those are good people. I liked what I was doing. We were doing, as we say, cool shit with cool people. That's a lot of what guides it. But the thing that can sound cynical when I say it is like, it is a wise way to run a business. So it might just be lip service for me saying I'm doing it because philosophically I care, but it might just be self-serving because it pays you back. If you are compassionate with people, they put their trust in you. They build loyalty towards you, which helps on the long term when you're trying to do stuff and you're trying to navigate through very challenging times. Like Sentinel Blue is going through a lot of growth. We're scaling at a size that pretty much everyone in the leadership team hasn't scaled at before. We're learning, and there are learning pains and there are frustrations. But everyone is very bought into it. And so it's very collaborative. And when mistakes get made, one of the things one of the proudest moments I've had leading this company is like a few months ago, we just had a really bad week. Like somebody messed up a project, somebody messed up a client deliverable. There was a major outage. There was like, a client fire. Everything sucked that week.
Yeah.
And it all started on Monday. It was like Monday was a heater. And I was just like, oh, this is going to be one of those weeks. Every Friday we have an all staff get together. We all get on a call. And our VP of Ops, Sam Marksberry, said something. Was like, hey, this week we proved that we can be tested and we'll be better for it. Like we proved we can be tested because we were tested and here we all are. And one of the things that everyone recognized was like that whole week, the people who made the mistakes owned it. And then they saw their teammates pick them up and just picked up and run. Like a couple of mistakes were made. Someone like totally sort of flubbed a deliverable on a project and just made what in hindsight was a bad decision that they should have known better. And then they had to watch their teammates have a tougher week because of it, which really eats at you if you actually care about your teammates. Like that hurt. That person had to watch for a week because that person dealt with the fallout of their bad decision. And at the end of that, no one threw blame. No one was like, hey, you effed that up, you ruined my week. Everyone was like, hey, we got your back, right? And it's because you have a culture of today it's you, tomorrow I'm going to do it, one day I'm going to do it. Like that's life. That's what we're doing here. But but being around people who are not going to throw blame and who are instead going to work through it together, I don't think you can cultivate that in an environment where it's driven by, bottom lines and KPIs and only those things. Those things are good. You have to run a profitable business, but it can't be the driving force of things for very long. I think it'll drive you through a couple quarters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll drive you through to your next liquidity event, your next capital exchange, or whatever hyperbolic sort of thing they're saying now. But it's not going to build longevity, and it's not going to create a ton of great culture. So that was my long-winded answer to like, where does all that come from?
No, I love that. And I really appreciate it, because essentially what you're saying is, employers and employees, from a perspective of trust and a perspective of caring about people, just general decency, is you're teaching that you reap what you sow, and
Yes.
and that a company that cares about its employees reaps and invests, sows, gives up something, really does reap some good stuff. And I think that's an excellent culture. Appreciate it. And I'm happy for your employees. I will say that I'm happy for them.
Yeah, no, we run a fun company. There's a lot of challenge, like all companies are. But on the whole, I think it's a great spot.
That was my next question. Is so what have you found to be, the biggest challenge of running this business? Because you said it's 6 years now, right, that you've been running it. I know that the growing pains is like a challenge everybody has, but what's like the most unique thing that you've learned from having to do this, that you would maybe have some wise words for others listening?
Yeah. So somebody told me when I was told two things that I really remember when I told people I was starting my own business. One was someone that was on the board of that defense company that I worked at, said, "Great, sounds awesome, start your business, but here's the thing. All the temptation is going to be there for you to stay up till 2 a.m. every night working on it. Don't let that happen." And that was absolutely dead right, because that's like so much of what happened, right? He was kind of like, hey, don't let it consume everything, because all the temptation is there for it to consume everything. And that was prophetic. And I still struggle with that sometimes, because you're always like, I can answer this one more email. I can solve this one more sort of issue. The other thing that I don't remember who said it to me or if I read it at the time I was starting the business, but it was essentially that when you start a business, you're going to amplify your personal character flaws by a magnitude of at least 10, if not like 100. And that has also been prophetic. Generally, if you come into Sentinel Blue as a business consultant, process consultant, and we brought you in to be like, hey, help us solve our problems, every problem you identify, there's going to be a trace, and they all kind of lead back to right here. It's just a lot of like we played a lot to my strengths early on, as you would, and didn't play to a lot of my weaknesses early on, as you would. I'm a great problem solver in the heat, right? It's why my paramedic career, my cybersecurity career work really well together. I'm great in an emergency. Call me, I'll show up. I can be the guy that can figure out what's going on and keep things moving well enough, stabilize, but then I hand off to definitive care. That's what I'm great at. I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. When you're in paramedic life, sometimes you got to figure out, how are you going to get the person out from behind the toilet that they've fallen behind, because they always fall behind the toilet and get stuck in like the third story apartment with no elevator. How are you going to do all that? Get them down while also, getting a breathing tube in them and putting an IV and getting the medicine and doing a responsible job. I'm good at that. I'm not good at a lot of other elements of building and scaling a business. So one of the key lessons has been bring in people who are not like you. Early on, I brought in a lot of people that like, hey, when you interview someone and you're on the same wavelength, you're like, this is amazing. This works perfect. Like, we're going to be great together. Well, guess what you guys could do together? A lot of what you already do well. But you have to be like, okay, this person's challenging me. They're asking some tough questions. Ooh, they've got a different way of thinking about that. It's very easy early on to be like, not a fit. When I think what you want to say is like, oh, that strength I don't have, that addresses a weakness. That's why I'm feeling uncomfortable. I need them on my team. That's been a big lesson. And we've brought in some of our highest performers, are people who have entirely different life experience and outside perspective, that are very personality different from me and from some of our other senior leadership. And that makes us better. And that's a lesson you got to learn.
That's interesting, because you're from the default, you're kind of thinking, what do I have to do to hire somebody that kind of I'm going to get along with. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's got to be at least
Yes, you have to have that.
You have to have that, but you're not saying that you're somebody that you're assuming that you're not going to get along with, but you're saying somebody that has um, different takes on, even on the same concern, on the same
Yes.
problem, because just because you're a creative thinker doesn't make your creative ideas always right. Right. So you're
Correct.
having multiple people attacking the same
Or the
problem.
fact that you have the big title make you the
Yeah.
guy who's right. And that's another thing is you can surround yourself with people who don't challenge you and who are deferential if you're not careful. But then you just end up, again, amplifying your own flaws tenfold at least. But if you instead find people that you can work well with, who you have to have shared values, like you just have to. You have to care about the same things, because the critical decisions where your values get tested, if you don't agree, it's an impasse. And I've had that happen. We had a senior leader, we had a challenging issue came up that was like, make decision A and you stick to your values. Make decision B, and everyone can always point at that and be like, yeah, when you were tested, you didn't really stick to the values. So I was like, hey, we're going A all the way, done deal. And that was an impasse because there was a total difference of opinion between me and another senior leader, and that cost us someone who I really enjoyed working with. But we had to make that decision because that's core to who we are. So you have to have the shared values. But what I mean is like having people who have a different approach or just hear the same problem and might make you feel kind of dumb for the way they answer the question, or the way they approach it. Because that can make you feel like, well, I didn't even think about that. Am I dumb? No, you're not. That person's going to feel the same way about what you say. We're like, oh, I wasn't even thinking that. That's the idea. You get a bunch of people who think about things differently, and then you can talk about it together and figure out, okay, so which of these ideas actually pans out. One of the things I've done, our CTO, Ben, and I, we're both very idealistic. We're both very optimistic. We're both very interested in technology. It's a common thing on a weekend. He and I are texting each other like, I'm running a new Linux build because I'm doing some local LLM stuff that has no impact on anything useful in my life, but I'm interested in it. And we do a lot of pie in the sky type stuff, but we have a leadership team that grounds us and that's cute, guys. We have client issues. We have problems that need to be solved. We have CMMC assessments.
Stop playing with your toys.
Right. And so if you just surround yourself with people who are all doing that all the time, you'll start a lot of projects. You won't finish any of them,
Yeah, that's cool. I was going to say that it just sounds to me like Sentinel Blue's on a good trajectory. It's really cool to hear that. I did want to kind of close out our time by asking about the Watchers, like just kind of some more deep questions, because that is a fascinating podcast. And I did want to ask you for that. Did you start doing that? Because I've seen a couple of the episodes, and did you start doing that as a passion project, kind of like what you were just talking about with like the LLM stuff, as a passion project, or is it more of like you actually feel like this is moving the needle for people in this industry?
I would like to hope for the second part, but that's a hope. Obviously, Sentinel Blue puts it on, pays the production cost for it. Sentinel Blue looks to gain some value out of it, and part of it is like, hey, it's a project to create visibility and create marketing material and all that. Yes, it has that, but as I tell people, like, sometimes you'll sit across from somebody, as I did the first time where I sat across from Andy McCabe, who's a guy I've seen on CNN. I was like, I'm nervous about this. Now it's pretty routine, but like, occasionally I'll sit across from someone, I can sense the nerves. I'm like, hey, we're just talking.
Yeah.
The cameras are here, but like, I'm here to have an interesting and good conversation. It's very self-serving as a project. It's creating opportunity for me to have conversations that I'm interested in, about topics I'm interested in, with people who I'm interested in having that conversation with, who in many cases probably wouldn't have that conversation with me, absent,
or maybe
cameras.
At all. Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's so cool.
It has created the conditions where I could, it was very surreal talking to General Petraeus, which like you only get that opportunity because the construct is there to have the conversation. So it's a passion project. It's a, hey, I had the opportunity. We have, you have to create marketing somewhere. You have to get your message out. We could do it the boring way. We could try something a little out there that's hard to draw a direct line between the watchers and, Sentinel Blue's client base. It's not like we're producing a sales podcast, but we're putting out something that we hope creates value, that is interesting. And if it's not to you guys, it is to me. And I own those videos. So if this all falls apart, I can still go back and watch, which I don't, because I hate the sound of my own voice. But I can at least watch the other side of it to be like, dang, that was really cool. Like I got to have a conversation with Renee Wynn about being the CIO of NASA, which is like, that's just cool to hear, what that was like. So yeah, it's a lot of, it's a passion project, and, core to the people that we're trying to bring on and why we call it the Watchers is in recognition of there are public servants, who are in the public sector or even in private industry. There are people who are doing work that protects the rest of us that you don't hear about. But when you do hear about them, they're often political pawns who are being treated poorly, who are being, everyone talks about like federal workers, like hey, they're just collecting a paycheck and they're not putting in the work and all that. Every one of them I've met is like a brilliant person who could be making a lot more money or could have made a lot more money in private industry, who cared about the mission, cared about serving the public, cared about being in a position to protect the rest of us or improve our livelihoods. We had someone that had been at like USDA, Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy, not always people that are, literally defending us from missiles and stuff, but who are protecting our way of life, who don't get to tell their story. So much of the Watchers is like, hey, come hear from these people who are doing critical work to our life and who are people you should want to hear from.
That's such a cool concept, because that was one of the things I was going to ask you is, what is the general type of guest you're going for, like, and what's the range of guests that you're planning on having in the future? But that makes so much sense. It's like the people who don't get any recognition for the way that they're protecting, like you, listener, like these people deserve some credit, and it's really cool to hear their story. That's such a cool concept. I'm glad you started it, because it was one of those. It was a little bit of an inspiration for us. We're kind of getting underway with this podcast. We've, I think, released 10 episodes, something like that.
It's fun, isn't it? It's just like, hey, I'm having cool conversations that, you would have if we carved out an hour to sit down anywhere, we'd have this conversation. But like in modern life, and especially with the pace we're all doing things, like you carve out a whole 5 seconds, when you're passing each other at the coffee thing, like, how's business? It's crazy, man. How's the family? Crazy, man. Cool, bro. On to my next thing. But when you schedule a podcast, you sit down, and especially long form. That's the other thing. Like,
yes,
I'm always
long form.
Same. Like I don't listen to 10-minute content. If I love the long form thing, because you actually get to feel like maybe someone a little bit more than their 10-minute prepared soundbite. It's hard to deliver a stump speech for 90 minutes. I'm not saying you can't, but 90 minutes is a good time to spend with people to like see them say the same things. So you really get a sense of what they're actually genuine about.
Yeah.
Especially the types of conversations we're having now and the type we have on the Watchers. They're not prepared. They're not scripted.
Right. You don't see a script in front of you when you're sitting there with that coffee cup.
Like I keep a tablet, and it has like 6 or 7 lines where it's like Army, NSA, and it's just me like, hey, this is what, this is their
That's
career.
exactly how I do it. I just have a couple bullet points, and I just want to make sure I cover things that I was interested in asking.
And, but this wasn't an interview. This was a conversation.
Yeah,
that's good.
I am the type of person that like if I was going to the next conference, I was told not to specifically mention it because of the timing of the recording. But if I was
recorded this the day before you're watching it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Believe that, please. But I'm the type of person that like if after a conference you wanted to get a cigar and spend 3 hours talking by a fire, I will, because I love theology, philosophy. I love this, industry. the nuances, like all the things that we talked about. These are the types of things I would just sit and yap with you about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it too, man. It's so fun. And I guess, you know, with us kind of getting underway with it, you know, we've had some challenges. I did want to pick your brain about like what it was that, first off, how did you learn how to do it? Because from the very beginning of your episodes, they are super high quality. So, and I'm not just saying that to puff your head up. I'm genuinely saying that that seems to be how it was from the very get go. Like, we're doing this virtually. We've had equipment issues to make it hard for us to do it in person. What is it that, where did you get your knowledge about how to do it? And then, like, what advice do you have for me? Because I'm trying to figure out how to do this better.
Yeah. So I took a lot of inspiration from one of my favorite podcasts, the Rich Roll podcast. Visually and sort of the style, that's kind of what I went to the production team with. And the second point is, like, we hired a production team. That's a lot of where the look comes from, is we have, you know, professional lighting and cameras. So it's a costly endeavor, but it was important to me. Like, we put out 1 a month, 2 a month on a good month. I'm okay with that. It's always been about, like, hey, let's spend more time and effort and energy and money on something longer form that visually looks good and sounds great, versus, you know, getting stuff out more regularly. That's a conscious decision that we made. But a lot of it's like, hey, we hired someone to do the technical of the production, so I don't have to think about it. I just show up, I sit down where I sit, the other person sits down, and now I just get to have a conversation. I don't have to know all the ends of things. Now, if your question was like how
well, that was a big part of it. Yeah.
If there's a skill to doing it, it's probably just because I listen to a lot of podcasts like it, and I'm sure I emulate the people that I like Rich Roll, like, has long form, interesting conversations that are super diverse, but it's always about things that you can tell he's interested in. And when we talk about guests who we're going to have on the podcast, like, I generally we don't pitch people that I'm not wanting to have a conversation with, but, like, sometimes there's something where I'm like, that's not a conversation that I think I'm the person to have, because I can't get excited about that. So we're not going to do it. We're only going to do it if it's genuine.
It's genuine,
and we can have a good conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And we're very similar in that way. You know, we have a lot of partners in this space that go really unnoticed, but they do a lot of really good work. And I feel like that, you know, because this is like an extension of our marketing efforts at Intelli.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is one of probably the best ways to keep it genuine while also keeping it on mission. So I didn't know if that was a similar approach that you guys had, but at the end of the day, you know, the types of people you're interviewing, you can just tell you just love, like, you've been chomping at the bit to talk to them.
Just so cool. How often you get to talk to someone like Robert Disney. This is one of my favorites. It's one of our highest view count podcasts. Pararescueman. Not totally related to, like, the cybersecurity stuff. I happened to meet him because he got into cybersecurity after his storied military career, but you got to hear a guy tell his combat story of getting shot through the face. That's a privilege, right? To hear somebody tell that and explain what they went through and explain what they saw and all that. That's a unique experience. Hearing Andy McCabe talk about what it was like to respond to New York City during 9/11. Hearing Teresa Shea, who I recently had on the podcast, we talked about, you know, 9/11, what her experience was. Bill Cameron, who was at the White House communications team when that happened. The logistics of that are fascinating, but also, like, I got to ask him, what was the vibe? What was that like to be realizing you're in a new world and, like, you're at the center of it? These are super interesting conversations that, as I say, and I don't mean this to, like, get high up on a soapbox or anything, but I do literally feel privileged to be in a position to do that. And I always tell my team when I'm out, we typically film on Fridays. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be out today. I really appreciate that you guys hold it down and make sure that things keep happening. Sentinel Blue's obligations are met, so I can go have some fun and create something that hopefully we all value. But at the end of the day, like I said, like at least for me, it's time and money well spent because I'm getting to do something that's pretty cool and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can tell you enjoy it. Yeah.
Who doesn't like to
We're,
talk?
yeah. Well, hey, that's why I updated my LinkedIn to Chronic Yapper, dude. I had to because
It's a good title.
It's chronic, dude.
You could be the CYO, the chief yapping officer.
Yeah. Hey, that might be the next little pipe, line in handle. Yeah.
That's the new C-suite.
Yes. That's a new C-suite position that we all want to make sure everybody replicates. Where do you see the Watchers going? If you don't mind sharing, I know you want to keep that content kind of nice and secret and tight, but where do you see it going in the coming days, and any exciting episodes you want to tease?
Sometimes people have asked like who we would have on as a guest. And because of the space we're in, like it borders into politics. And so we haven't had a serious interest from like a politician. I'm not saying we're at that level because we're very much not. But people have said like, hey, would you have someone from the current administration or the previous? Like, yeah, dude, people are people. I'll have a conversation with anybody. I've got common ground with most people that would have that conversation. I'd love to hear more from people who have been part of executive administrations, not just in the executive branch and agencies, but actually part of the apparatus at that level. Because I'm very interested. Yeah.
Like at that level?
Who work for the cabinet, brief the cabinet. I'd love to hear. I'm very interested to know what are Congress people being advised in cybersecurity. Like we have all this conversation here in industry and in the ecosystem and whatnot, but so much of the problems and the things that we're dealing with could ultimately be addressed by Congress. And I'm wondering, like, who's telling them? Who's talking to them? You have people that are working towards lobbyists. We're trying to hire lobbyists. Right. So that's a way. But most of these Congress people have advisors, or they, of course, have staffers who go out. Well, where are those staffers getting information? A senator doesn't just talk to a lobbyist to go in to the session where they're going to talk about cybersecurity. They have staffers who pull reports and all that. So I'm interested in how that works. So I'd love to hear from people like that. Nothing's really off limits. And, generally what I'm trying to do is you land a guy like Jack Resider to come on the podcast, that opens up more doors because people are like, okay, so if that guy gave you the time of day, maybe I should.
Yeah.
That's the experience. You just gotta kind of have to create enough good where people see the value and you're just building momentum. And then hopefully you get more and more people with larger and larger sort of followings. It's a weird sort of like power structure to creating media where, you start out at the bottom and everyone's like, yeah, we've had someone be like, talk to me when you have like 20,000 follers. I'm like, how about I just talk to me when how about we just talk
to me now? We're human beings, dude.
Yeah.
You're so cool.
Yeah, there's stuff like that that's just weird. But where I see the Watchers going is I'm going to keep on keeping on. I'm going to keep on having conversations that I think are interesting for me, that, hopefully cultivate an audience, create some value for others. And we're going to keep on doing that until we decide not to. And I don't see it stopping, at least not for another 3 months. Cause I've got bookings for the next couple of months of guests that are coming out.
Yeah. I hope you guys don't stop. They're really good. They're really good. I wanted to ask you, first off, I thought this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on. And I hope that maybe we can do it again sometime, or do some other stuff together. Cause that was, there's a lot of people that we have aligned values with in the industry for sure. Like, in general, but not as many with the same types of experiences. That's kind of where I'm thinking is, I don't know if there's a lot of the same types of like lean, mean, business oriented, but also people oriented as like the pinnacle of how you're doing things and doing like podcasts and stuff like that. I don't know if we have a lot of people that are doing the same type of experiences. So maybe there's more opportunities for us to hang out more. I did want to ask, did you have anything specifically that you want, GRC listeners or GRC, focused listeners or people in the upcoming days with CMMC and the phase rollout, anything that you really want people to be aware of that you were hoping we got to that maybe we didn't?
No, not really. I mean, I generally tell people I do a lot of public talks now. Like,
Yeah.
I get to go to a lot of these events and get some stage time. And there is a culture, and again, this is going to be sort of cynical, but sometimes there's a culture of like, you hear from the same people and they say a lot of the same thing. And a lot of times it's not saying much. It is what it is. When I speak, I do try to make sure, like, am I saying something that's useful? Am I saying something that's different? Not only for the sake of being edgy and being different, but like, can I flip a bulb somewhere where you're like, okay, cool, I can run with that. So I always try when I'm given that opportunity that you just gave me, like, let me try to find something of value to share that might actually help somebody. So here's what I'll say to that. Getting back to like CMMC and GRC listeners and all that sort of audience. Don't forget what you're ultimately doing when you're doing something like CMMC. You are trying to create cybersecurity maturity. You are trying to create cybersecurity protection. You are implementing controls against risk.
Yes.
I'm sorry to do this on IntelliGRC's podcast because I'm not going to hate on GRC tools, but I'm just going to say a lot of times there's a lot of chatter and discussion about documentation. Documentation is important, but the number of times I've come into an environment where they were so focused on finding the optimal documentation, governance, platform, which is important. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm just saying turn on MFA first. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's deal with your Windows 2012 servers first. I know we should have change management, but we don't need to build out a perfect change management structure. We should probably just email each other and say, is everyone cool if we shut down the 2012 server? That's okay to start. This is what a maturity model should have been. This is what a progressive approach to securing the DIB should have been. It should have been an addressing of MFA solves 90% of the problem. FIPS validated cryptography solves something close to zero. It's not exactly zero.
It's so true.
Something close to it. A better approach would have been everybody do MFA and we'll give you a lot more time to do the FIPS thing instead of being like, hey, everyone have it all done, but you have 8 years to do it. I feel like we would have needed a lot. But again, don't forget that's what you're really trying to do. Don't lose the technology. It all matters. The processes, the procedure, the policy, the governance, that matters. But at the end of the day, we're controlling access to data and systems. We're ensuring that those systems are available, that the data in them maintains its integrity. Don't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's easy to lose sight of because, again, I said this stuff's super unapproachable. Sometimes what feels very approachable is working with Claude to write some policy. Going to Claude and be like, hey, Claude, well, I guess you can't use Claude in the DIB anymore, right? Going to ChatGPT or Copilot and being like, hey, help me write an incident response policy. That's great. That's good. But I wouldn't do that if you don't have MFA turned on.
Yeah.
You know?
That is a really, really good point. The way you put it in the form that we were, you filled out before coming on was really good. It doesn't even, it's not, you kind of, it's not that you backtracked, but you kind of rephrased it. I agreed with what you said in the form that this stuff that you write over here, these SOPs and these policies, none of that matters if you don't actually in real life and in your technical system implement security. None of that matters. If like nobody ever opens that drawer and reads that document and does actual real life tangible things in accordance with it, it doesn't matter that you wrote it down. So no, that is a
so far as we know, nobody's been compromised by their incident response policy.
Yeah.
But they've been compromised by not having MFA on, or by, having nothing to address phishing, or having prolific privilege access accounts, or having uncontrolled devices. A lot of like what you would point to as common sense controls that I really, really wish if I were king for a day, I could be like, hey, I say this a lot and I know we're running late, but anytime you give me a soapbox, I'm going to stand on it.
You're good. Let's stand on it.
A lot of times what I go out and say on CMMC is like, Sentinel Blue really is invested in the success of CMMC. If you could point to a company who's really bet on CMMC, You have Sentinel Blue's MSP practice, where we exclusively service defense contractors. We exclusively work with them when they're headed towards CMMC level 2, at least 99%. And then the other half of the business is our C3PAO practice that just does CMMC certs. If anyone wants this to work, it is Sentinel Blue. I'm on the advisory council at the AB. If anyone's involved, anyone wants this to work, it should be us. We should be its greatest defenders, but I'll be the first to say it's got major issues. It's got major architectural problems, and we're swimming uphill as an ecosystem to try to account for it. We're trying to figure out how to give good guidance about ESPs, because the model just sort of afterthought this major component. Yes. And part of that criticism is like, dude, if I could have designed this differently, I really wish we would have identified the 10 things that actually stop threats today. I'm not saying we shouldn't have flaw remediation. I'm not saying it's not cool to have NIST look at your, cryptography for 18 months in their lab. These are nice things to have, but they don't move the needle in the same way that making sure MFA is on and that single sign-on is set up into all your corporate apps, and that
users are trained. Just
right. And you have a basic EDR solution. Like, had we started there, we would have saved billions. We would have given a much more maturity model path for companies. Instead, like the early version, if you were around in CMMC early days, there was like a version 0.4 that we all first saw. I think there was even like a 0.2 that might have been released. It looked nothing like this. Like it wasn't 800.171. It was a whole other thing. And then they sort of like worked their way all the way back down. There's the Delta 20 for a time. But there was a maturity model. That's way more what we should be doing, like a CIS type maturity model. Like, hey, everyone should at least have this. And then when you have that, work toward this.
Yeah.
I know the detractors will be like, the detractors will say, well, NIST already tailored what they think the minimum threshold is for CUI, and it's NIST 800.171. I get that. I get it. But come on.
Hey, it's just Spurs, man. It's the Spurs score. It's the 5-pointers, man.
But they're not. We call them 5-pointers. You know what? They get you 1 point when you do them. They just cost you 5 if you don't. So again, MFA is weighted the same as having a procedure for publicly posting, to public systems, or it's weighted the same as having, a baseline documented. I'm not saying none of these things are bad. Like everything in 800.171 and 800.172 and NIST CSF and CIS controls and RMF, you're not going to generally hear me say these are bad things, all things said. Like good security is great. The more security, the better.
Yeah.
But not out of sequence, and we have to be risk aware.
Yes.
The whole model is just sort of like baked
prioritize risk. It's definitional risk management. So yeah.
Right. But we've misapplied it because they've said like, how do we address the risk of, Lockheed versus the solopreneur who touches some CUI? Like you guys all have to do the same thing. What cost Lockheed $1 billion is going to cost you 40,000. They've got the $1 billion. You can't pay your 401k this year. It's not how I would have done it, but there's probably many good reasons why I'm not the one who was involved.
Well, but you're in the industry,
and I'm trying to use my
you're
trying to get my influence, what little it is, to push some reasonable, especially small business friendly interpretations and positions from the DoD, DOW, and whoever else. We have to ground it in good security principle. We have to bring it back to like, hey, what are the risks that we're addressing? We can't have a model where we're doing controls from 10 years ago in today's world where the adversary moves compoundingly fast with all their new tooling. We just have to be smarter.
You have to have a reverse proxy, man.
I love a reverse proxy. Just make sure it's Linux.
Do you remember when they had that in the initial draft of Rev 3?
Oh, I don't remember that. There was a call for specifically reverse proxies.
Yep. I put a comment in for it. I was like, are you out of your mind?
Very interesting. But very, very 2014 thinking, because like a reverse proxy still valuable, still useful, but it was very much like how you did things.
For a cloud only majority of the div, I guess, for at least the small business sector. Come on, guys.
Yeah, but at that point, maybe just if you're like a cloud vendor, like your web application firewalls sort of reverse proxying,
Yeah.
so call it that. It's the same thing. We don't call it split tunneling. Sometimes it's dynamic routing. Like we'll find new ways to name things.
Yes. Well, yeah, exactly. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out, and we're here to help anybody that needs it.
Yep.
Andy, how can people get up with you and Sentinel Blue? If they're interested in learning more about you guys.
My LinkedIn, I'm sure we can put a link to it. If you follow me on there, I try to post with some regularity. SentinelBlue.com, the Discord, I try to be pretty active in there. And then if you see me anywhere, like I go to a lot of events, I like to think I'm pretty approachable. I don't think I'm a big personality in that way. I love to hear from people who are like, hey man, I saw you on that podcast and I thought it was cool. Like that makes my day. So I'd love to hear that. Anywhere you see me, say hey.
Well, Andy, I really appreciate it. This has been really fun, and I think
this was a good time.
I hope it's helpful for people. Let us know, and I guess we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Andy.